Thank you all for your testimony, and I'm sure there's some questions coming from my colleagues here. I guess one of the fundamental threshold questions is whether we can segregate, I hate to use that word, whether we can separate one type of hate crime and say, this is the worst, this is the priority, to the exclusion of the others, we're only going to deal with one. Ms. Berry?
Thank you, Senator. My position is I think not. We've worked collectively as a community to understand the nature of these hate crimes. As you said in your opening remarks, we have the highest number ever reported since the FBI started collecting the data in 1991. And the response has to be one that acknowledges all targeted communities are being impacted. So our response has to be one that acknowledges that and as a result understands that singling out any one community doesn't actually get us all safer. I certainly agree that different communities are targeted at different times and perhaps for different reasons, but the underlying issue is one of hate and a crime, and we must respond accordingly.
Rabbi, do you believe that language being used by politicians that dehumanize certain groups adds to this atmosphere of hate crime?
Thank you, Senator, for the question. I think that all extreme political rhetoric is dangerous. Just look at the two recent attempts on President Trump's life, and I think that both sides should absolutely do their best to tone it down.
And do you believe that as politicians, if we set out to dehumanize groups like immigrants, does that have an impact on the conversation about hate crimes?
Thank you, Senator. I think no group should ever be dehumanized, period.
I couldn't agree with you more. Mr. Stern, you give the example of the El Paso Walmart and the Pittsburgh synagogue and believe that though the targets were different, the motivation was the same. Explain that.
Well, and you had mentioned, Senator Durbin, the Buffalo shooting, too. If you look at the ideologies of the three shooters, they were a combination of seeing hating immigrants, seeing people of color as a threat, and believing, as my colleague Eric Ward articulated very well in an article called Skin in the Game, that white supremacy, the backbone of it is anti-Semitism. So you can't really separate them all as saying, well, this is a problem only in one sense, this is a problem in another sense. They feed on each other, and I agree with the rabbi that anti-Semitism is a threat to democracy, a miner's canary, and so forth. But the flip side is also true, that vilifying anyone among us is a conveyor belt to anti-Semitism. It helps people see the world as, why are we losing? Why were people at Charlottesville talking Jews will not replace us? It's because they saw that they were losing a place in society, they felt, and they thought that Jews were behind it again. Anti-Semitism is Jews conspiring to harm humanity and giving an explanation for what goes wrong in the world. So that's how I see these things as related.
Ms. Berry, how do you draw the line in conversation in a free society like America when it comes to how far you can go? Can I disagree with Bibi Netanyahu and still stand up for Israel?
That's entirely up to you, Senator, and I think the answer would certainly be yes. The issue is not the matter of speech in terms of it's objectionable or not, but why are you targeting an individual? And are you committing a crime in the process of targeting that individual? If you're targeting a person because of a protected category, that's a hate crime. And the importance of the point you're making about dehumanization and speech, I think is absolutely critical because, for example, I might say something, but that's entirely different than you would, Senator, as the chair of the Judiciary Committee saying something. Your standing in our society is such that you hold a certain importance as an elected official. And when our elected officials are engaging in dialogue, again, not about policy disagreements, because you can have policy disagreements. It's when you target specific communities as the source of those problems. That's where we find ourselves in the place that we are, which is that we see spikes in hate against specific communities after comments are made or communities are targeted. We saw it during the pandemic. We see it now when we talk about immigrants the way that we do, and we certainly see it across the board. I want to remind us again that anti-Black racism as an issue is the reason we continue to have a plurality of all hate crimes targeting the Black community. And the final point I would make is that since the hate crime data was collected, the anti-Jewish category in religion has always been the top category. There is undoubtedly a problem of anti-Semitism in this country. That goes without saying, and the data has verified that. It's what are we doing to respond to it in a whole of society approach that is correctly focused on the actual problem.